first? Who? Got first base. Who? Got first. Who is on first? What are you asking me for? I'm asking you.
What is up, everybody? I am Tim Ellerbrook, and welcome to this episode of Who's on First. I'm with my good friend Brian Caplinger and a new friend we have today, Gary Reimler. How you guys doing?
Doing good. Thanks for inviting me this morning.
You bet, man.
Yeah, I'm excited, man. 2 spring games under the belt, you
Right.
know, baseball in full bloom. Maybe not today in Florida because of the weather, but hey, we'll see. Hopefully they get a game in.
The weather's in St. Louis has finally kind of turned a little bit, so I'm not so sad, but I still think I'd rather be in, Palm Beach, Florida, even if it's raining, than St. Louis. But hey, can't complain. It's going to be 60 degrees today. That's going to be super nice.
That's right. I'm looking forward to it. Maybe get out and throw the ball myself.
Hey, hit me up. Don't do it without me. Some stuff's happened this week. Mostly spring training games have started, I think, Saturday. There was a couple games on Friday, but the bulk of spring training started Saturday, and then Sunday being yesterday. We're recording Monday morning. What are some things that, briefly, has anything stuck out to you as you've watched, I guess, Cardinal games and any other team games that has been, something simple to get us started?
Yeah, I mean, it's been a lot of fun to watch baseball again in that live action aspect where it's more than just practice. But I think for me, even this year, probably more so than previous years, I'm actually paying attention to the batting cage reps and things like that when the live pitching is happening in the practice formats. When you have like McGreevy going against Willie, those type of battles, they're interesting to watch, not just from the perspective of just seeing if they're going to do something well against the pitchers, but even the adjustments. And I think for me early on, and it's no surprise, I mean, we've talked about it all off season, but the swing adjustments from Walker and Gorman and even Victor Scott, what they've been able to kind of do is really kind of intriguing me, because if you can, and I'm not saying everybody's going to want to do this, but if you can go back and watch some of the at-bats from last year to even their spring practice at-bats this year, there's a noticeable difference in stance and things like that, which to me speaks of, somewhat of a culture shift to a degree. And I know, we brought Brant Brown in as our hitting coach, and I think he's brought an excitement that maybe our hitters haven't seen, especially our young hitters haven't seen in a while. I was listening to the interview that Dealing Cards did with Brendan Donovan last night. And even Donovan talked about him really, really highly. Like when Brown first got hired on, one of the first things he did was reach out to all those players and ask for like videos and things like that so that they could gel and get together. I believe Donovan even went to Arizona to have a session with him.
For sure.
And like everybody, like when you see these interviews, I mean, you see the Walker interview, you listen to the one from Donovan last night, you even listen to Victor Scott talk, just the impact he's made in a short amount of time. Like they've really focused in early on the mechanic side of things, and now they're just starting to get to like the mental side where they're going to game plan and prep for pitchers that they're facing. And I think you're already seeing dividends, maybe not on the stat sheet in the first 2 games per se from everybody, but you're starting to see good approaches and good at bats, and like even against some of our tougher pitchers that they're going against just in regular practice has been interesting to watch.
Something that sticks out to me, I listened to it this morning, but one of the media guys interviewed Gorman, I think probably last week on the backfields, and asked him about the adjustments he made. And he said that he was the first one that Brant Brown reached out to, and he flew to Arizona, which is where Gorman, I think, resides in the off season. And they like deep dived into what's going on. And so I think that's really important, because whatever happened last season, we don't know. These kids took a step back in some sort of way, and for anything positive to come out of the season, even if it's not a winning season, we want it to be a winning season, but for something positive to happen, those 2 players in particular have to take steps forward, because if the Cardinals specifically want to be successful and get back to the contending team that they've always known to be, these kids are, and those two in particular, and it feels weird saying they're kids because they're like 6'3" and 7.
Yeah, but they're 22, 23 years old.
Yeah, but they're 22 and 24, which, I mean, they are kids because I'm stinking old.
Right.
But they have to be carrying the the offensive weight of this, or the Cardinals are going to have to restructure and figure out a new way out, a new step forward if they don't, because that's what the plan is now. Yeah, I'm interested to see what influence and what comes out of the relationship with Brown. Hitting coaches are a weird role in baseball because if everything is going right, nobody knows who they are or cares who they are. But if offensively everything is going wrong, it is their fault. I think his name was Jeff Albert in 22, and how like he quit or didn't want to return because the fans of St. Louis just couldn't like war on him too much.
Right.
And I think that's I actually listened to an interview from Brant Brown, and I don't want to misquote him, but he talked about how it's like the most revolving door job in professional sports as a hitting coach. They're fired every day, a new one's hired every day.
Yeah, they just think that it's going to solve the issue.
Yeah.
And I mean, and to your point too, you talk about in today's game of baseball, every player has their own personal coach as well.
Yes.
Like they're going on the outside.
Yeah.
Teams are allowing them to explore these, hitting venues, if you will, things like that, which none of that's bad.
Yeah.
But at times you can have competing interest. And so you're absolutely right. I mean, Brown could be in for a wild ride this year if the offense doesn't turn around.
Yeah.
But
it's the nature of the job, though, I would imagine, when you accept it, like, hey, if they suck again, I'm probably going to have fun. And I think it has to do with, I think it's all about personality management, right? If you, as a coach in that type of skill set, can you connect with this hitter and figure out how to elevate his game? Because first of all, you got to have the talent, but the talent's there. They've shown it for a season of somewhat. So, like, can this guy really connect and pull out of him what he needs to, or do they just not get along?
Right.
Or, vice versa.
And I think that's what excites me the most about Brown is just, his willingness to get to know the player. He didn't come in with a plan of, hey, we need to change all this. It was more of, what do you feel? What do you want to do? What's your approach? Have you thought about this? Like that's the reverberating, if you will, conversation that keeps coming back with all the players. Is it wasn't this, hey, I need you to do this. It's, what do you want to do? Have you thought about this? It seems like he's putting them ahead of productivity on the field.
Yeah,
and so I think that will win him maybe a little bit more time, even if they don't get off to this fast start. Now, I'm hoping it's a quick start because I don't know that the fan base
too.
here.
Like, the team needs to come out of the gate at least playing 500. Like, April needs to be a 500 season. I mean, sure, you want a winning month, but they just can't tank like they have been the last couple of years. I think if they play 500 ball, I think the fan base will eventually show up. But I've been thinking a lot about Gorman and Walker in particular, and like what is the thing that they need. And I did some deep dives and research, and it really, both of them really just come down to like hitting the fastball again.
Right.
When they were successful in 23, they were both averaging against the fastball really high and slugging against the fastball really high. And in 24, whatever adjustments they needed to make, whatever happened, they started trying to go after hitting the breaking ball and the slider better, but then that didn't allow, or that, no, let me take that back, that put their averages against the fastball lower, so they weren't hitting the fastball as well, and they still are not hitting those breaking speed pitches really well. So they've got to get back to seeing the fastball and smoking that thing, because both of them have some of the hardest hit rates and swings on the team and even in baseball, and so they've got to find a way to see those and hit those again and stop trying to not try to hit breaking pitches because they've got to adjust or else that's all they're going to get. But when they get fastballs, they need to punish them.
Yeah, and I haven't had conversation with either of them.
Right,
I mean,
right,
I wish
right.
I could, but to me, from the outside, what it looks like is, especially last year, they went up expecting and looking for the breaking ball, and that caused them to be late all the time on the fastball.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't do that, especially at the major league level. You've got to go up there looking for the fastball, unless you do a lot of research game plan. I mean, I understand a dynamic of going up there looking for a pitch because a pitcher typically throws this pitch in this scenario, all of that stuff. But, you know, you and I have talked about this, and to bring up another name, one of the things I love about Corey Seager is his approach at the plate.
A lot. Yep.
Right. Like, he's looking for the fastball and he reacts to everything else.
Mm-hmm.
So his goal is I'm going to make sure I'm ready for your fastball, and then I'm just going to react at the plate to whatever else is there.
Yeah.
Now, sometimes you're going to get burned because if a pitcher's got a good breaking ball, you're going to get fooled. I would rather you get fooled on the breaking stuff than can't catch up with the fastball.
Yeah.
Because for the majority of pitchers in MLB, they're going to live or die based on their fastball, not their breaking stuff.
Yeah, one of my favorite things about him is his high first pitch swing rate. If the pitch is tracking in the zone, he's going to swing at it no matter what. But if it's out of the zone, he can like perfectly see, you know, his strike zone, and if it's out, he just won't swing. But I like that about him. But the thing about in baseball is those breaking speeds and those off-speed pitches are elevating percentage-wise. So they're throwing them more and more, but everybody needs a fastball. Everybody has to be able to throw a fastball to compete. I'm going to throw a couple of things at you, and as I did some research. So for Walker, in 2023, he had a batting average of 349 against the four-seamer. But in 24, he had the average of 222. So he dropped over 100 points on average with that pitch. To compensate, he got worse with the sweeper in particular. He had a 219 average against the sweeper in 23. And in 24, he had a .063 average against, so he could never touch it. So for him, it's like if the sweeper is not a pitch that he can hit very well, he's not going to get great contact to get it, but he needs to get his four-seam and sinker averages back up. He's got to be able to smoke those. Now, Gorman, on the flip side, is an interesting case. More so, in 23, he had an average of 261 against a four-seamer. And in 24, he had an average of 162, so dropped almost 100 points. But yeah, the sinker, which is I think it's just a two-seam fastball. It's just a new name for it. Gorman had a 347 average against the sinker, and in 24, he had a 262 average, so he lost almost 100 points. The difference between the two of them is in 23, Gorman had a 103 average against the sweeper, and in 24, he had a 222 average. So he gained 100 points of average on it. But again, those pitches are going to be thrown less because the sweepers are the out pitch. I think is what they would be considered to be standard, right?
Yeah,
that's the pitch that's used to get you out.
Right, it's a breaking ball. I mean, unless you're a pitcher that's got really, really good control, you're not going to use it to get ahead of too many hitters. I mean, you may throw it to somebody who struggles with it early to see if you could get a cheap swing out of them, things like that.
But so he gained 119 points of average against the sweeper, but to compensate, lost 100 points of average on the four-seamer and on the sinker. Is the trade-off worth it? Now, this is a human being who we have no relationship to. This is just some baseball nerds thinking, you know, what could this player do? But I don't know that it's worth it because if you think about the success of one season versus the success of the other, sure, he hit those off-speed pitches better, a little bit better, but lost out on all the power potential because fastballs are going to get thrown more than off-speed. So you're going to get more opportunities to hit and do damage on fastballs than you are these. So yeah, I am paying attention to him in particular. Is he making contact on fastballs, or is he swinging through because his swing was adjusted for off-speed? Or, you know, what did he do in the off-season to get back to it? I want to see him barreling fastballs, even if they pop up, even if they hit to an infielder. I'm not necessarily, at least in the beginning, I'm not looking to see if they make it for a hit on the score chart. But is he barreling them and hitting fastballs again? That's what I'm super paying attention to.
Yeah, and again, it's all adjustments. We know this. Major League Baseball is about adjustments because pitchers are going to find what you're weak at, and that's what they're going to go after. And so for both Walker and Gorman, the approach has to be lay off of the pitches that aren't in the zone, especially the breaking ones. Right, because if you can get ahead in the count, the chance of seeing a fastball and being able to guess right goes up. I mean, it's still one of the hardest things in the world to do is hit a fastball regardless.
Yeah, especially at the velo that's happening,
Right.
Standard velo is like 95 now.
Yeah, on average. And so, I mean, you think about it, even the past couple games, most of the pitchers are staying around 98. I mean, with the exception of Michaelis, who's not going to be that high. Those type of pitchers. But most of the relievers that come in the game, they're touching 100 now.
Yeah.
And so you've got to get the count in your favor. That's going to be one of the biggest things. And I think it is, again, both of them are young, and so they've got time to grow, but learning how to react. When the count's not in your favor, react. And just, be okay with a flare base hit occasionally. Maybe you'll get lucky and run into a couple of them just by reacting, and you make some big plays. And so that's exciting. The other side of it for me is John Jay joining the team. I think he does a lot for Victor Scott. Even Ciani to that point. I think the defensive presence that he brings and the mentality of the game, being around other organizations. I mean, this is a quality guy that knows how to instruct. But I think he does something for the top of our lineup as well, because he can teach people how to get on base. He can teach people how to run. Yeah. And so he was never like elite at those things, but he understands it at the coaching level.
You could for sure say those guys were core to the success of that 2010 to 2015 team for sure. And David Freese was there too.
Right.
The legend that is Freese.
There's only one legend that didn't get to show up this spring.
Poor Jimmy Ballgame. I'm excited to see the defense that comes about in the outfield with Jay. I think it's endearing for Cardinals fans to see, previous. I don't know if you'd call him a hero, but he was an important part of that team for sure.
Absolutely.
He's a good coach. I'm still waiting for Alan Craig to show up to this team and show our team how to hit in clutch situations. I don't know if I'll ever get my wish, but you never know. But yeah, I'm interested to see if it makes a difference with Walker. Can he be an average outfielder and just be fine? We're never expecting him to be an elite outfielder. But I think seeing the coaching staff vibe too is important. Them being somewhat of a cohesive thing. And I mean, Jay and Descalso have already had a relationship. We're already really close friends. So I'm interested to see that. It was really cool also. JJ Weatherholt, the brand new prospect, got a home run. The first home run of the organization is someone who's not going to make the club this year. So I don't know if that's a good thing.
Well, and for me,
that's mostly a tease.
Right. For me, I knew his bat would play.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like that wasn't something that shocked me. I mean, him being the first one to take one out of the ballpark in spring, it caught me off guard a little bit. Right. But
really opposite. It almost made it to the corner, I think.
Right. I think for me, what's been more impressive from him is his versatility. I thought he was going to be locked in at second base, maybe third base, but to see him play defensively yesterday at shortstop in a game, and have some good plays. Like when he had an opportunity, he made the right plays. Now, I'm not saying that's a threat to win. Wins the shortstop there.
100%.
But I think if there's somebody that could potentially sneak onto the roster this year, given still some of the trade rumblings, those type of things that I don't necessarily want to get into today.
On the hype train a little bit?
But maybe I'm just like, got a little star in my eye for him all of a sudden after that big swing. I don't know. But I think there's an outside chance because he's a collegiate player. He played really well in college.
Yeah.
And his bat plays. Like, he's showing that. Now, obviously, he's going to have to do a lot more in spring than one at bat. But, man, what a start to the spring for you.
He's going to get a lot of plate appearances in spring. More so, I think, especially on the front end, because if I remember correctly, last spring was the first one I really paid attention to, but most of the starters only played a couple innings every game, every other game.
Bats, typically.
And then they don't ramp up until the second half, so most of the non-roster invites are who take up the bulk of the innings. It was cool to see for him, and I think him to get that win. Something that stuck out to me in an interview I watched, though, is Ollie Marmol said that he really wants to see him have really good success, but he really wants to see him fail at something really bad and see how he can adjust and handle failure, because I mean that game is all, like you said, it's all about failure and adjusting from it. So you don't want to see a kid that just wins at everything and succeeds at everything, because when he gets to the big leagues, he's gonna miss something. He's gonna strike out in a really clutch situation or bobble a ball. So he wants to see him in spring have that. So I'd be interested to see that. He's a really confident kid. I think Donovan talked about him in that interview, about how he prepares really well and it's got a really calm head on his shoulders. But it's really fun to see a high-level prospect that's really, really close. I don't think he makes the team at all this year, if I'm going to put my my stamp on it. He started in single A, and he's either going to go to Peoria, which I think is high A. That's what that's called, right? Or they might jump him to double A in Springfield. But for an organization that has a knack of rushing prospects and not developing well, I don't think they can afford to get that one wrong. So to rush him feels like they would be hitting that a little bit, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I think a lot's going to center around the health of the team, those type of things. I mean, if I were betting, I would say, maybe a 10, 15% chance that he's on the team by the end of the year. I don't have an expectation that he's going to break camp with the team. And Ollie's comments about that, they said the same thing about Walker. They want to see somebody struggle, which, I mean, I understand the notion and what they're trying to say, but at the same token, it's like, if this kid just hits and he plays a solid defense, he's going to force the issue very much like Quinn Matthews did through the ranks last year. He
could do the same exact thing.
Right, and he's going to put pressure. Whether or not he makes the major league team, I have a feeling he's going to put pressure on the people in front of them, and that could be a good thing, because then it could force some of these other guys to step their game up. Again, the question mark for me comes if we have to move some pieces, if the season goes that way, even towards the trade deadline, and we start moving some pieces around because we don't like what we're seeing, vice versa, whatever the case may be, he becomes that player that if he's performing well, why wait? I mean, we saw it with Paul Skeens, and now different position, don't get me wrong,
probably different talent level.
Right, I was getting ready to say, different talent.
But, I mean, you're not wrong, because what about the kid in Texas? I forgot what his name is. They had him. They drafted him. Yes, Langford. Yeah. I mean, and talent level's probably pretty close.
Right, and
Age,
so that's my thing. Like, he's not a veteran by any stretch. Weatherholt is not, but he's an older prospect in regards. He's not a 21, 22-year-old. I believe he's 23. Already. And so you're talking about having those players on the team already, and Walker and Gorman and Victor Scott, those age ranges are there. So it's not a far-fetched thought to say, if he's performing well, he's going to be a core of our young talent that's coming up. Why not just get him in the games and let him struggle in his rookie season when it doesn't matter, if we're on the downside of that?
Yeah, I mean, there definitely is some good thought to that. I mean, so to push back, is bringing a kid up from single A straight to the big leagues good for his development, though?
I wouldn't be surprised, though, if he starts in double A.
I don't think I would either, especially if he does really well in spring. If he struggles in spring, I think he's going to high A.
Sure.
But if he does really well in spring, I could see him going to double A. He could do the same thing that Walker did, right? Because in 22, he was in Springfield and just destroying the ball, and they were like, we don't really have a shot. He's put him up in 23.
Right.
He
and
so he could do the same thing.
Yeah, and again, I'm not saying I want to rush him just for the sake of rushing him. He's going to have to prove it.
Yeah.
He's going to have to earn that. But if there's any one of our prospects outside of maybe Matthews, he's the one that I see that could push the envelope to that degree.
He's got the best hit tool.
Right.
I feel like a good comp for him would be a much more refined, better version of Donovan. A higher average, higher on base version of him with more slug. He's not going to be a 30 home run dude. He might be a 20 though, but then have a better on base and hit tool.
Yeah, some people aren't going to like when I say this, but he's a prime Matt Carpenter bat.
Ooh.
Like, not in his down years.
A lot less pull though.
Yeah, but I think what you're talking about, I should clarify, profile-wise, he's going to be a doubles, a gap type of guy. He's not necessarily going to be this overtly power. Like, he's going to run into his fair share.
Yeah.
But he's not going to be, like, quote-unquote, what you're hoping Walker or Gorman become.
Right, yeah.
In that power profile.
Different size human, too.
Right. But, I mean, that's, to me, like, when you think peak Matt Carpenter, when he was doing his thing from, whether it was the leadoff spot or the 2-hole, those type of, that's what I see for him consistently. I think, overall, I think he's going to develop into a better bat than Matt Carpenter was for his career.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, I'll take that because I think a lot of people sleep on Matt Carpenter. He was solid.
He just kind of fell off at the end. But yeah, I would say from what I remember and what I've seen on stat pages, he was really good for like 7-8 years plus. So a couple things from spring and before we move on. Something I'm really interested to see is one of the hires that we made was Carl, I don't know how to pronounce his name, Carl Kakan. I apologize profusely.
He can come on the show and correct us.
Right. If you hear this, hit me up. He was hired as the new strength and conditioning, essentially. He created that new department, which I think is interesting that we didn't have someone like that. But that's going to be like fitness routines, health and diet routines for people. And so I wonder, you don't know if this takes place, will show itself in the first season or if it will take longer. But for like Newt Bar, people like that who are kind of like fringe IL guys that we insanely elite players, but sometimes just can't stay healthy, or like Roby, who we'll probably talk about later. What will that department, that position influence for those? That's something I'm really excited to. That's going to take a lot longer, I think, to see, because I don't think you can judge that by spring if he gets here in November and it's like building something from scratch. But that's something. And the other one, which I think is really, really under the radar, underrated, but we hired a guy named Ihan Goforth, I think is how you pronounce his name, and he's the catching coordinator.
Yeah. Which
we've never had one, which is the dumbest thing I think I've ever heard before, which I get.
You don't need one.
We
when
had
you had
the best catcher of all time, handling everything, which is it's amazing. But I'm interested to see what he does, teaching prep, helping with relationship building with pitchers and catchers, and what that looks like, because we Herrera was one of my picks last year who I talked about paying attention to, and he had some issues with his arm, wasn't able to throw runners out. He adjusted in the off season, and I listened to a small interview from him how he talked about the adjustments that he made. Looks really, really good. He's really excited. So what does that trickle down effect, and how will that apply, in the organization? Because he's not a big league coach that's going to be sitting in the dugout. He's a part of the organization as a whole, so far all the leagues. But obviously he's there. He's working with the catchers, working with the pitchers, and building that game planning routine and profile. So that's something I'm really excited. I just think it's crazy that we've never had that. That Ivan Herrera has been in the system for however many years and has had no coach teaching him how to coach, aside from just a normal baseball coach. Yeah, nothing specific. And it's like, how is it fair to expect him that he was supposed to be this elite catcher when he got up here, when there was no catching teacher? It's like, what?
Right.
Now, we had Yachty, right? He's a legend. St. Louis, he's going to eat free in St. Louis forever.
Right.
We love the dude.
Right. Come on back whenever you're ready, Yachty.
I mean, he's hired.
Right.
He's just not showing up. So I get that, and I don't want to degrade that because that dude, obviously, we love that guy. But for all these kids that have, Leonard Bernal's another one, Jimmy Crooks is another one. These guys haven't had catching coaches in the minors teaching them how to catch and like what to look for, how to talk to a pitcher, and so it's like what. So I'm really excited for that. I think that's going to be a really, really big deal.
Yeah, and the last thing I'll say about just spring is the fun that they're having together. It seems like this team is enjoying each other. I was watching the clip, and you've probably seen it, of Willie and Burley taking their infield drills and
the push-up game or whatever.
Yeah, they got a little side bet going that if they misplay a ball in practice, the other one, whoever misplays it, has to give 10 push-ups to the other.
Yeah.
And they had a spirited conversation because Burley said a ball was hit away from him, but Willie swore it hit his glove, hit leather. He said if it hits leather, you should catch it. And so they made Burley get down and do the 10 push-ups. And so I'm hoping Burley's holding Willie to the same standard there, because that'll be a fun one to watch, barring even, the competition, if you will, that's there between the two of them, because I know, Willie's moved to first. This will be an adjustment for him. Yeah. But the fact that he can have some fun with it while he's learning, and
he's like the epitome of fun too.
Right. And my heart with him. Like, he's a ball player. Mm-hmm. Like, if there's somebody that I'm going to bet on figuring it out quickly, is going to be this guy, because I think he just cares that much about the game of baseball.
Yeah. If there's a vet that I would want to stay for the rest of his career on the team right now, it would be Wilson Contreras.
Yeah. I love his energy, love his passion. And so I'm not betting against him, but I would say if Burley can step up and play a good, solid defensive first base, I think they're going to split some time there at first base because of the DH role. They can go back and forth as DH.
Do you think it ends up being like 82-82?
I don't know if it would be completely even. I mean, obviously injuries always play a role in that. Yeah. If you tweak a back, something like that, first base is a tough position to have bad back, those type of things. But I think it's going to be more evenly split than some think. I think still Willie's going to get the bulk, and he's going to get the first opportunity.
Yeah. Oh, he's opening day first baseman, for sure.
But I don't know that if he's not picking clean, if he's not playing a solid first base, and Burley looks like he's got a little bit better of a handle on it, you're talking late inning substitutions where Burley may go to first base if you're in a close game, or, giving him some of those starts, because the goal really for both of them is at bats, right? And you can still accomplish that no matter which one of them is standing at first base. So it's going to come down to really who the infielders are most comfortable with. Yeah. And all of that. I mean, we've got two great defenders on the left side of the field in Nato and Wynn. And you don't see much issue there. They're both fairly accurate. Wynn, even with his electric arm.
Yeah, Wynn. That's something that you kind of made me think. I was watching some different game highlights, and there were some throws that even Arenado actually, they'll make a throw towards, whether it's on the run, whether it has to be like a quick release, and it will kind of go past first base a little bit, and Goldie would have to reach out. Like, I remember there was a specific play, I don't remember the game, but Goldie was on his hands and knees trying to grab it, but he kept his toe on the bag.
Right.
And it saved. It got the out. It made the was it Win? I think that was an Arenado throw. It made Arenado look like a highlight play. But that play doesn't happen if Goldie doesn't make that happen, which that position's obviously very underrated defensively, but that will be interesting to see. Like, can Willie save some throws that just need to be saved?
Right. And I think early on it's going to put some pressure on the infielders, because they're going to have to be a little bit more fine-tuned, make some of those stronger throws where they knew Goldie was going to bail them out. A Gold Glove first baseman, does help your team all around regardless. Now, I'm not going to put Willie or Burley in that conversation of Gold Glove first baseman. Not right now.
Willie wants to win one, though. He came out and said it.
Hey, like I said, I wouldn't bet against the man.
True.
But, he's got to prove it. And so it's going to put a little 100%. Bit of pressure on the infielders to maybe make some of those. Hopefully, and I'm sure they're working on this in spring, that a lot of them are throwing it low and short hopping to him to get him prepped and ready for those type of things. Not that you want to create bad habits in yourself. I'm not saying Notto's short hopping it to him. Please don't throw it. But then you've got some coaching staff that's out there short hopping it to him and putting the jugs machine out there and firing them across at him on a low angle to see if he can pick them. Our
Lord Savior Stubby Clap's helping him a lot, so... Yeah, I'm interested. I'm interested to see that. That will be great. Something somebody said, a podcast or a show I listened to this week that talked about how opening day and the final of the season are two different time periods, and just because quote unquote this person's your opening day X doesn't mean that's the person that the season will end with, and that doesn't mean that's the person that the next season begins with either.
Right.
He was referring to Victor Scott because this particular person is high on him as I am. Which Victor Scott's 2 for 3 and Siani's 1 for 2 are actually 0 for 2 with a walk. I just want to point that out. Let's talk pitching because I don't do that a lot, and I know you like to a lot. What are some transitioning from hitting the ball to pitching and throwing the ball? What are some pitchers that you're keeping an eye out, or things that you've seen this week or maybe in a game that you're looking at?
Well, I mean, I think for me, the one is there's an excitement around some of our arms. Mm-hmm. I mean, you talk about obviously Quinn Matthews. We'll get to see him tomorrow.
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah, as long as everything holds up, unless because of weather today it gets pushed back, whatever.
They don't do double headers in spring they just cancel the
game,
right?
Yeah. Typically, it's very rare unless they really want, because what they'll do is they'll still get the work in.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they don't typically play the game. But, for me, I'm hopeful for kind of a bounce back from like Michaelis. I'm not saying he's going to be elite, but
in your eyes, what does that mean?
Maybe back to innings eating. He has that high, just over 4 ERA, but he's competitive. I'm not looking at him as a legit number 2, number 3. Like, honestly, for me, if he bounces back and has a solid number 4 rotation spot type of deal, I could be okay with that. I don't think he has electric stuff. He would probably tell you he's not going to just like overpower a lot of hitters in that regard. So he's going to have to mix his pitches well. And I think he was disappointed last year. I mean, you heard in some interviews with him, he doesn't want to go out that way. He doesn't want Cardinals fans to remember him as the guy that fell off the boat last year. And so like maybe there's an opportunity for him to prove it a little bit. I'll be interested to see if that holds true. I'm hopeful. Like I said, I'm hopeful that he returns back to what we need him to be. And we don't need him to be an ace. We don't need him to be a number 2. I just need him to eat innings so that we don't have to burn our bullpen before we get to September.
Yeah, if you think about it, you just need a quality starter out of him, which is I think like a 4.5 ERA. Because if the math checks out, because the quality starts 3 runs in 6 innings, right? I think that equals 4.5.
Yeah, close
ERA,
to.
Something like that.
So, yeah.
I mean, if they get that out of him, that's a win.
Right.
For sure.
And again, I think you look at someone like Fetty. For me, he's just a Gibby replacement. He's replacing what Gibson did for you last year.
Higher upside, wouldn't you say?
I mean, potentially. We haven't really gotten an opportunity to see him.
Yeah.
So, and we may not. I mean, again, there's some rumors circulating that he may be on the move, so we may not. I mean, I know his value's there. He has promise. Like, I don't want to just like write him off, but again, it's another pitcher that, isn't going to necessarily overpower hitters. Like, we're not looking at those type of pitchers.
You would consider those finesse pitchers, right?
Yeah, like they're going to pitch to the corners. They're going to pitch to the weakness of the batter. Those type of things, which is needed, like, and can be successful, but it puts a higher demand on your defense because that means more balls are going to be put in play, those type of things. And so you have to be ready for that. For me, when it comes to the current construction of what it looks like our opening rotation is going to be, the big question I have is, can they be an under 4 ERA rotation, or are they going to be a way above 4?
Yeah. It's hard for me to pinpoint what the rotation is. I think Fetty needs to be traded, before the season starts, just simply because he has him and Michaelis is in this category, but he's got a no trade, so he's not going anywhere. But Fetty has no plan and purpose for 26, which is what we thought this season was all about. Now, Arenado staying has obviously changed that. But Fetty's going to be a good pitcher, but his value is higher right now, I would think.
Well, here's the thing. If he goes out and pitches well, it doesn't have to be elite.
You mean in the season or in spring?
Yeah, in the season.
Mm-hmm.
His value is going to be at the trade deadline because there are always people looking for a starter to add to their rotation that are in the mix. So his highest value, as long as he performs to his career standards,
so then let me pose a question
be
to
there.
You. Is the percentage chance of that happening higher or lower? Fetty pitching well to the deadline and gaining value to use in the trade deadline, or Helsley staying healthy and having value at the deadline? Which one is a higher chance of happening? Because I feel like I would probably put Helsley staying healthier. Personally, I don't see. I have a hard time seeing. Now, we saw Fetty for a month and a half last year, and we traded for him because his numbers were stellar. He went over to Korea, did something to his arsenal. I think he added the sweeper, but his sweeper does something different. So obviously he did something to his arsenal to make himself of value. But was that special, or is that still his new? That's the thing. I'm just not sure. Like, I don't know if that is real enough long term to keep his value for 3 months.
Yeah, Cardinals fans are going to hate me.
Yeah.
Because I don't see Helsley lasting this year.
Like
arm-wise.
Oh, so health-wise.
I think he's going to get hurt. The velocity that he throws with.
Yeah.
Not saying he will, and so please don't crucify me on socials and all that stuff. Like, I don't hope for that to happen, but like the tendency is these higher velocity pitchers.
Yeah.
Always have arm issues at some point.
Oh yeah.
Now, granted, Helsley is mixed in a new cutter that he's throwing. Those type of things, which can be helpful because maybe he's not looking.
Just makes his AAV go higher.
Right. And it's not looking that he wants to just kind of pound 105, 104, 102 fastballs
his
all the time.
His slider usage went up last year a lot.
Right. And so I mean, I'm hopeful that both can happen, that he stays healthy and Fetty has a good year. But if I'm forced to pick between the two, I would say Fetty has a better chance of staying to his career numbers than Helsley has at being completely
new career numbers,
healthy.
like last year career numbers?
I mean, whatever his new coming back, not per se what he was before. And then his value would be higher. Because again, you're talking about two premium positions when it comes to the trade deadline. Everybody wants to add a massive reliever.
Yeah, high-end reliever.
Right. And everybody wants to add that rotation piece that's going to be able to get them through. And so it wouldn't surprise me if we have a downturn of a year, like let's say we start out slow, that both of those guys get moved at the deadline.
I think that's true. I think the only way Helsley stays to October is if we're in October. I think Helsley's gone at the deadline if we're like middling.
Well, you have to.
I kind of wonder. I think Fetty's gone no matter what. It's the first week of spring training.
Right. Now, given that question, I agree.
You agree?
I agree with that because I think you can find a replacement for Fetty, whether that's, Quinn Matthews really becomes who you think he's going to be. McGreevy steps up and takes a spot. What's the health situation of a Steven Matz? We've got a lot of internal possibilities and options.
Yeah, our depth is pretty
that would
deep.
fit what Fetty can be. So I agree with that statement of Fetty's probably gone one way or the other at the trade deadline. You're just hoping he's having a decent year so you can get a little bit more value out of it. Because if he has a downturn, you're probably looking at a lower end, relief arm that's going to come back.
That's the gamble, right? That I get. I'm not nervous because I'm not involved in this whatsoever, right? It's just a fan and a media nerd. But like if if you traded him now with his value so high, because he makes so little money in comparison to other starters, and he had a 3.3 ERA last year, so he's got a lot of value, and what you can get out of him right now is probably pretty good. But say he gets a 4.5 ERA and at the deadline, even though there's more pressure because people need pitchers, and you never know, there might be a team that sees his stuff and is like, oh yeah, we could use that and make that better. But the value that he is at the deadline in those numbers just seems lower, and the risk doesn't seem worth it to me. But that's just my opinion.
Right.
I might not be right there, but
no, I mean, again, you're talking to two people, three maybe, that'll sit here and say, we don't get the privilege of sitting in with the GMs every day to go through that type of idea. But I think even if he's Fetty, I'm talking about, even if he's hot towards the trade deadline, his value increases. Let's say he's had a rough start to the year, but the next 3 starts right before the trade deadline, he looks like he's, a man on a mission.
Right.
Somebody's going to be willing to give up something for that because they're going to bet on that. That's who he's going to be the rest of the year. I guess you
can think of, I don't remember what the package was, but the Dodgers traded for Lance Lynn in 23, and that's his worst career year ever. And he was even worse. No, he got a little bit better for the Dodgers, but not like good. But then he gave up that one game. I can't remember that one game in the NLDS where he gave up like 3 back-to-back home runs or something crazy. So, I mean, you can trade mid.
Right.
But you're just not going to get
out
of it. And that's kind of what I think.
Hey, the way I understand it is the starting rotations, are we all right-handers?
As of right now, like if you were to look, so if what everybody's projecting works out to be, you're looking at Sonny Gray,
Eric
Fetty, Michaelis, Palante, and then Steven Matz.
Yeah,
so there would be one lefty in the mix, but that's it.
So, but then also Palante is considered has reverse splits, and his numbers against lefties are better than against righties. So he's kind of like considered a lefty-ish in the mindset, because the way his fastball moves just makes left-handed hitters not able to track it really well and hit it really well. So you could say there's 3.5 right-handers and like 1.5 left-handers, if that makes sense. Right. But then Matz hasn't been healthy his entire contract here, has yet to pitch 100 innings or something.
And I say there's a fair point in saying for Matz that he's actually been more valuable to us out of the bullpen.
I agree.
Than he has been in the starting rotation. Now, whether or not he's willing to accept that as his role,
I don't know that he has an option. I don't see for some reason, Marmol, we've never met with him, we've never asked him, but the times that he's been able to do that, they bring him out of the pen pretty quickly, except for last year. Last year he ended in the pen, so maybe that would be the best, because McGreevy is ready to start.
Right. But do you think that they need more left-handers? I mean, it seems predominantly right-handers, and you got to get some left-handers in there.
Yeah.
Well, that probably sets up a person you want to talk about.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's Quinn Matthews. That's why I think they're so high on him. I think the rise from single A all the way up through the minors last year and what he was able to do statistically, his high K per 9. I mean, you saw even in going back to the spring training, you saw him going against live hitters, and he ended up walking. I believe it was Sagasi. I could be wrong on who he walked. And then he was forced to face, I think it was Brendan Donovan, and he came out and just shoved Brendan Donovan down. He said, look, I was mad that I walked somebody even in practice.
Yeah.
And so now I'm just coming at you. Yeah. And was able to get him on like 3 or 4 pitches.
He's the closest to that Chris Carpenter, like,
right.
The funny term that we like to use, like got that dog in him type of guy. Pa has hit a bomb first pitch off of him.
Right.
But you can't really judge, like those type of things in the backfields aren't great indicators, because
they could be working on a pitch that they're just throwing the same pitch over
and over. Yeah.
Right.
Totally. But I think he is one. The other Matthew Liberatore is being stretched out to start, and Ollie came out and said that most of their fringe relievers are being stretched to start because it's easier to get them back to their relief
bullpen,
pitch count than it is to stretch them out midseason,
right.
which totally get. But he's been one of those guys that's like, we kind of want him to start. No, he's a good reliever, like back and forth. And he's a lefty. He's got a really good fastball, but when he starts, he just throws, the velo is just too low for it to be useful.
Right.
He's only ever been able to get the velo of it in a competitive spot when he's pitching out of the bullpen. So he could, if he lights it up in spring, I could see them letting him try and start again.
Right. And I mean, and I think, that's the challenge for the Cardinals is they've got a lot of these, what I would call middling guys that could be good relievers, possibly 3 to 5-ish rotation start type of pitchers. Because then you could throw in Graceffo. You've got some of the other ones that are coming up soon. I know your boy, Herbie. Is that his name?
Jerpy,
that's right. Yeah. I always want to put the H on there, but I know it's pronounced with the J.
That's fine.
But yeah,
which is also a lefty.
Right. So there's the players are there. Now it's on the players to a degree. And, obviously the organization on developing them well in that regard, but they've got to kind of set themselves apart. Kind of similar, no one's going to, I shouldn't say no one. Very few people are going to do what Matthews did in his run through the minor system. But some of them have to start to take that step up and define. Like Graceffo is one that I think, for me, I want to see, is he just going to be a relief arm? And that's okay. You can make a good MLB career being a legitimate
reliever.
Bullpen piece.
Yeah, because look at John King.
Right.
That dude, he had like a sub-3 ERA last year. Incredible at what he does. Very, very specific niche at what he does.
Right.
But yeah.
But teams need that. And they're gonna come after that. They're gonna pay for that. And so you can do that. I think it's just on the player, because I think every player will tell you, pitching wise, unless they're legitimately comfortable in their role, they want to start. Because it's the prime spot.
And
everybody
you make more
wants
money
the
that
ball.
way for
right.
sure.
Like, I get it. I wouldn't argue with any of them. I can't pitch. I'm a BP at best baseball pitcher. So
underhand.
If somebody just wants to rocket home runs off of me, I'm your guy. But outside of that, like, there's a lot of question marks. I mean, again, Graceffo, Roycroft, even King. Can King become more than just the specialist, that lefty specialist? Can he be a viable arm out of the bullpen on a consistent basis? Those are the questions I have when it centers around the pitching staff.
Yeah.
For me, if you're just going to run it back out there with the pitchers that you have that I mentioned already, I think Sonny Gray is going to be fine. Like, he's just who he is. Like, he's a good, legitimate number 1, number 2 pitcher.
Yeah.
If Fetty's going to be on the team and he's pitching to his career numbers, his late career numbers, he'll be fine. The question then becomes, can Palante repeat what he did last year? I like giving him the opportunity by far. Is Matz a viable option as a starter? I have questions about that because we haven't seen it.
Right.
Same thing goes to Libby. Is he a viable starter? Right now, I would say no, because we haven't seen it.
Yeah. No, he's not had enough success with it.
The only other person that we saw at the end of last year, and even so far, at least through practice, what we're seeing is McGreevy. He's been legit in that. And so I think you got to start thinking about giving him that spot.
Yeah.
Michaelis isn't going anywhere. We owe him too much money. Again, no trade clause. Teams aren't going to trade for him.
Yeah,
I mean unless he goes out and has a lights out year and is pitching tremendous and is willing to waive his no trade clause at the trade deadline, because
Arenado has a better chance of getting traded than that.
Right. I agree with that. So
yeah, I think so. Two and a half particular pitchers that I'm really, really paying attention to. Tekoa Roby, is one. He started the game. Was it yesterday? Was it Sunday's game or? He didn't start. He piggybacked off somebody.
Yes.
He was a stud. He had really high velo. Mixed really, really well. His fastball was sitting 97, 98.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think he averaged 98 across the board.
He had 2 innings. He pitched 2 innings, had 3 Ks. The movement on his pitches is really good. The key for him is health. Ever since we acquired him from Texas, he's been injured for most of both the seasons that he's played. The most, I would probably say he's got the most natural, like, arm talent, in my opinion. Just, like, can go out there and just do it. Like, he's just got the stuff. But can he stay healthy? Like, he's not pitched more than, like, 100 innings. That's a guess, so don't quote me on that, but it's not super high because he's been injured for most of his career. I think if I were to take a guess, and probably would bet on it, I think if he's healthy, he's on the major league roster.
You think so this year?
I think so.
Okay.
I think with his talent and where his stuff is at and his arsenal is at, he's going to pitch for us. Now, is he going to start or is he going to be in the bullpen? That remains to be seen. If he can be stretched out, and see, this is the key that might be really tough. If he can stay healthy and get stretched out by the end of spring. I'm not talking about June and July. I'm talking about March 27th, I think, whatever his opening day. If he can be stretched out, can stay healthy, doesn't get hurt, and sustains it, I could see him starting in the rotation over McGreevy. Not because McGreevy's not earned it, but he's got the most natural stuff. And it's kind of like his profile and his, you could say, stat page, most likely going to get hurt at some point. So it's like, if he's healthy right now, like, use those bullets for the major league club. Now, if he can't stay stretched out, I can see him going to the pen, or I could see them put him in the pen to begin with.
That's what I would say. That it's more likely of a chance he starts in the pen.
Yeah,
just because of the injury risk. They're gonna want. I mean, they're gonna want to stretch him out. Like, I mean, he's a starter. Like, don't get me wrong, but I think you start him there so you can manage his innings a little bit better since you're trying to stretch him out. Not that the Cardinals are typically in on doing this, but if they were to go to a 6-man rotation,
they've talked about that.
Right. Maybe he can become that swing guy, because then you could say, hey, at the beginning of the year, we're going to give him 4 innings, right? That's all he's going to pitch. And then you piggyback somebody else off of that, because you're not looking for wins or losses at that point.
Well, if they're going to 6-man, they can't do piggybacks, though, because their bullpen's already lowered.
Well, but what I'm saying is then you start to play the send up, send down game, or the IR game.
Yeah.
Like, there's ways around it. Like, I'm not trying to say manipulate the system, but every team does it. And so you just find ways of adjusting, because they've got enough arms in the pin or in the system to be able to jump up and down without like depleting some of the key guys that you're going to need.
Aside from the fact that Matz is always hurt and he's been mid for most of the time, he had a great 2023 ended the season really well. But aside from that, it's been pretty mid, pretty boring. Same health profile, probably, maybe.
I can see that.
Which one are you going to pick? The one that's going to get injured at the same amount of time but just has electric stuff, or one that you're just paying money to do the same thing?
And in my world,
I don't know that that's a good question. But.
Right. I mean, I get what you're saying, but for me, I guess because Matz is there, he's on your roster, you're paying him. You start there with him, and if he gets injured, then maybe it does give Roby an opportunity to slide in to that spot, depending, again, on what you're doing with the other pitchers. If Fetty's not here, there's not a lot of argument from Roby potentially being the 6-man type of deal.
Quick
because
question then.
McGreevy can slide into Fetty's spot in the rotation.
Yeah, and so if we're putting Matz and Roby in this category, not because they're the same pitcher, but just for the sake of this question, which one starts and which one should be in the bullpen? Because if they both come out of spring healthy and they both need to pitch, because if Roby's ready to pitch, like, why?
Yeah,
so which one goes where?
It goes back to if you're really truly doing this youth movement, I say then it's got to be Roby starting, and you start with Matz in the bullpen. And maybe it's one of those that you talk to both of them and go, hey, on the days that Roby pitches, Matz, you're coming in right after him regardless, because we're only giving him this many pitches.
Yeah.
And so you're going to be the guy that's coming in, and they essentially become a combined 6 starter. You see what I'm saying? On that opportunity or fifth starter, if you will.
Secondary question to add to it. We're belaboring this a lot, but this is really fun. McGreevy is the third question in this option because innings is a thing, especially in the season. We're not talking about the playoffs right now. You've got to get innings out of it. If Roby and Matz give you 7 innings collectively, because say Roby only goes 5, and that's like his max.
4-3, yeah. I mean, whatever.
And Matz comes out and gives you 6 and 7 because he can do not spot start, but long relief.
Yeah.
But then you have McGreevy over here who can do that all by himself and save your bullpen. Which one are you going to pick?
Yeah, I mean, you know my feeling there.
Yeah.
I'm high on McGreevy.
Yeah.
I mean, I would start him right now, day one. I think I would pick him over Steven Matz or Roby just because of what we've seen from him.
Yeah.
That's why I say I think there's wisdom, and again, Ollie, if this ever finds its way to you somehow,
that would be a fantastic podcast.
You can by all means come on and talk it through with us because you see things way more than we do. But for me, I think there's a lot of viability in having a 6-man rotation where your 6th spot is reserved for essentially a bullpen start, if you will. Because you have Roby and Matz there that you could potentially do. If one of them gets hurt, you could bring Libator back into the picture to do the same thing on that end. Or there's other pitchers like Graceffo. There's these other pitchers that you have that could be paired with Roby so that you're not overextending any of them and potentially keeping them healthy.
Yeah.
And we've seen it work. Like, let's just say they do go on this magical run.
Yeah.
And they find themselves in the playoffs. We've seen where even that style of pitching is successful in the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like,
I mean, it's kind of standard now, especially in those 7-game series.
Yeah, and so for me, I like if I'm managing, put my name out there in the hat for any MLB teams that want somebody with absolutely no
Brian
experience.
Caplinger.
That's right. Give me a call. I would go to that 6-man rotation, especially because you've got a lot of arms that you want to see throw in the MLB. That's going to be the best way to get them innings.
I think I would just do the 5-man and put Matz in the bullpen and call it a day. And not teeter on it. He's only making $11 million, which, I mean, for us, that's a lot of money. In baseball world, that's not much money at all in comparison. And, you might get him the whole season that way. But if you start him, he's going to get hurt. That's what's going to happen.
You originally asked the question about over and under 4. And it sounds like we really don't know yet because we don't know who's going to be in the slot.
Yep.
So, I mean, if right now I would say that's going to be over 4.
But, I'm with you.
I
don't hold out much hope.
It's tricky. This team's floor is really, really low. It could drop out and they could be a 70-win team and be almost a 100-loss team. Or they could win 88 to 90 games because all of their ceilings, that everybody hit their ceiling. So that gap in margin is just so high. That's a good question, though. We don't know until spring's over because we don't know who the rotation is going to be.
Yeah, so maybe that's something we come back to. But you said something that made me think of this.
Okay.
So Brandon Kiley posted on X yesterday, they're getting ready to do their top 20 players that are going to have the most impact for teams. But he put out the question of the 10 most impactful players for this season.
Yeah.
For the Cardinals, and I saw a bunch of people were on there posting. I know you put your list on there. I didn't put my list on there, but I made my list.
Okay.
So I want to see where we're at on this.
Well, you've seen mine, so.
Well, you start. Who's your number? We're going most important to least important. You give your first one. I'll give you my first one because I think we're going to match up on this.
Yeah,
one.
I mean Walker's my first one.
Yeah, me too.
Him hitting his ceiling is the biggest requirement for this team to be good to this year plus.
Yeah, we need a power bat. And I'm not saying Gorman can't provide that, but we need a bat. And again, I don't want to put this type of pressure on the kid, but we need someone that's in the Albert Pujols-esque range of not that he has to hit those high level. Yeah. I want somebody that's going to be close to 300 that's also got the potential of at any point in any game just coming up there and just saying, hey, see you later like you did in Miami last year.
Yeah, every team needs a top 10, maybe top 15 MVP type of vote.
Right.
hitter. Yeah.
Yeah, and that would be him.
Yep. 100%.
So who's your 2?
Gorman.
See, I have Lars Nootbaar here.
For this year specifically?
For this year specifically, because I think he has to have a rebound year if we're going to be successful.
Well, he's my number 3, so we're really close.
Yeah. And so...
What you think... him reaching his ceiling is an interesting statement for you to answer the question with him putting number 2, because his offensive ceiling's being hit already in a sense. Maybe not... Fully, but he's been really close to it. For all 3 of his seasons, he just not.
I think he brings stability to the top of our lineup.
Yeah.
If he's healthy.
Yeah.
I think he's a player that can really set the table.
Yeah.
I know right now we're seeing a lot of Donovan in the 2-hole early in the spring, but I think as we work that out, I think Lars is going to end up being back there. If not,
I would agree with you
he's going to be 5, so he's going to be resetting the table after our big swingers.
That's where Donovan should be.
Right. And so if he can kind of get back to that, where I'm not looking, 20, 25 home runs would be elite, in my opinion, for Nootbaar in that regard.
I think he's got more in him.
If he does, great. But I mean, I would consider that wonderful. I want to see that doubles. And I even think this, if he stays healthy, you've got a legitimate, I would put him in left field. I'm not saying in center, but I know they're talking about the potential for him playing center to create at-bats for Gorman and people like that. So for me, that's why I think if he maxes out wherever he plays and at the plate, it's most beneficial because it creates spots for Gorman to continue to get at-bats, for Burley to continue to get at-bats.
Yeah.
And that's why I have him at number 2.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I've become more high on him the last couple of weeks and how important he is to this team's 2026 plus, because he was picked to be like the superstar of the team before Walker came into the picture. And he's got incredible numbers. His expected stats are through the roof, which just means those stats are calculated based on his quality of contact. And it's not necessarily how the outcome actually comes, but the way he hits the ball and the quality of contact that he has, he could be the superstar of the team. And obviously his popularity, and it could be that number 1, what the team's built around. I just think it's more important for him to not get hurt than it is to reach his offensive ceiling. Yeah. So maybe that's why I put him in number 3.
Okay, so that's your 3. My 3 is Quinn Matthews, and we talked about this a little bit yesterday.
Yeah.
The reason why I think that is because you have someone that's a legitimate top 2 rotation style pitcher, and if somehow he finds a way to get on this team and pitch at that level, it does change the game for us. A 1-2 of him and Gray could really catapult this team to success. Yeah, I think they're a team that could. I'm not saying they're going to run away with it or automatically become World Series contenders on any means, but I think it changes that projection. I mean, you talk about the low floor, high ceiling type of deal. You add him at a high level, and all of a sudden, I think we trend towards the 85 to 90 win season because of what he's going to be able to offer. And that's why I have him at 3.
So he's on my list, just lower, because I don't think he makes the team whatsoever. No shot. Even so, say he has a stellar spring, I still think he goes to AAA just because the rotational issues we talked about, 5 minutes ago. But if he has a stellar AAA month and he gets brought up, I think I would move him to my really, really important. Yeah.
Gotcha. All right. So then you said Nootbaar. You already kind of went through that at 3. So
my
who's
number
your 4?
4 is Mason Wynn, just because I think he's the face of this franchise. I think he's the franchise player. Is he going to be the offensive superstar that the team is built around? No, but I don't think he needs to be. I think he is the face that the team is built around and that can carry the quote-unquote weight of the organization, if that makes sense. But I think he's going to be a 110, 115 OPS plus bat with a Gold Glove shortstop, and I think any team would take that.
Yeah. No, I agree. I have him at 4 too. I mean, I feel like he's a Jimmy Rollins-esque type of player. Maybe a little bit higher.
I'm ashamed to not know who that is. Sheesh.
Phillies player. He won a World Series with the Phillies.
Okay.
Solid shortstop. Good all around. Good defense.
Yeah.
Good at bat. I mean, just quality player, was able to kind of be the face. I mean, now there were some other players on that Philly team that were pretty good at that point too, but he was able to be part of that. You know, if you're looking for a more modern, who would I say? Oh man, it's tough. Maybe a Lindor, Francisco Lindor, like, because they've got quality players around him.
That's a good comp.
Right. So
I think personally, this is a personal opinion and the fan in me, he was the first jersey that I ever bought. I think he is the Bobby Witt comp, just a little bit lower of a skill ceiling.
I mean, his rookie numbers were better.
Exactly. I texted you that earlier this week. They almost had this. He had a better rookie season than Witt did. Now, Witt's breakout year was last year, which I think was his third year, maybe fourth year. He got his big contract before this past year, so I think it was his fourth year. So we had 3 seasons of that. Now, Witt had a 2020 season from the beginning of his career, and Mason Wins only hit 15 last year. I don't think he stole 20. I think he.
But he said he wants to up that.
But I think that's the profile that he wants to play towards, and I think you build your organization around that.
Oh, 100%. That's why I have him at 4 too. So, who's your 5?
So 5 was Matthews. Similar conversations, but are similar points, but I just think he's lower because his presence doesn't matter until halfway through the season. Does he need to be an ace like pitcher for us by 26? Yes. This team is depending upon that happening. But I don't think it matters in April.
Okay. Fair enough. I have Ivan Herrera here.
It's my number 6.
Yeah, so I figured it was going to be pretty close on that one. I think what he's able to do behind the plate could really turn the tide for this team.
Yeah.
Not saying he's going to be like this, automatic thrower where he nails every runner that takes off on him, but if he can improve on those numbers, his defensive metrics aren't that far off from Pages. And I know when you talk through the organization, a lot of people value Pages' defensive ability over Herrera, but I don't see, when I look at the numbers, I don't see that much of a difference.
Yeah.
That Herrera's bat then outplays the difference defensively. If he can be that, close to 300 hitter, I think, man, what a luxury that would be to have that type of player behind the plate and hitting for this team.
He's in that same spot for me. It's just other people were slightly important. I think the only difference between Pages and Herrera that the organization likes is Pages' ability to communicate with pitchers and game planning, which, to a couple of different media personalities' credit, they talk about that's what Yachty was. When Yachty came up through the system, he could prepare and game plan really well, and his bat came later.
Right.
So I could see a world where the organization chooses Pages simply because of that, and like, hey, if his bat gets to 100 OPS plus, that's a win because the pitchers just love pitching to him. But I could also see a world where the organization gets a 300 average hitting catcher and is like defensively average, maybe a slightly above average, and like the lineup is insane because of it.
Right. Well, and I think ultimately what they would love to have happen is eventually move Herrera to a different position if he's not going to be your everyday catcher. If his defensive metrics can't come up, I think kind of what you're seeing with Willie to a degree, move him off of that spot so that his bat still plays, even if it's a DH role. And then you have some of these younger guys like Crooks and Bernal that are coming up. Yeah,
that's the thing that we talked about last week of the first week. Like, it's a little bit of a moot point because in a year, 2 years, Crooks is the franchise catcher for.
Yeah, but by that point too, does that mean that there's a spot open in another spot for Herrera if his bat still plays? So, so that's my 5. 6 you said was Herrera.
Yeah, for me.
So I have Andre Palante here.
It's my 7. Look at that, dude. We're super close.
That's right, because I think pitching is going to be key, and I think if Palante can build on what he did last year, increase a little bit on his right-handed at batters, if he can focus in on that a little bit, stay true to what he does against lefties, man, he could be a surprise. I think he could potentially force himself up into that 3 or 2 spot starter conversation if by some glorious run. We're in the playoffs.
Yeah.
Because he has the ability to do that.
Yeah, I think the team is dependent upon him. I think the team is dependent upon his floor being 2024.
Yeah.
And you're raising it.
Absolutely.
Does he need to be an ace? No. He can be we need him to be a number 3.
Right.
In my opinion.
Yeah. So my 7 here, since you already said Palante was yours, mine is Gorman. This is where I have Gorman.
Wow.
The reason why I have him at 7 is because I think that if his bat changes, would I gladly move him up on the list 100%, but I don't think we absolutely have to have his bat to change dramatically to still be successful because we have other players. So and it's not a knock on Gorman. Excuse me. I'm getting choked up because I love the dude. I don't want to put him this low, but I feel like I had to. Because again, you talk about if Walker does hit his ceiling.
Yeah.
You're getting power there. If Newt Bar increases a little bit, Herrera's there. I mean, you've got hitters. If Nolan, if Arenado's going to be here and he gets back to his numbers, the offense is going to be there.
Yeah.
And I think when we look at Gorman, the only thing we focus on is his offensive side. He's an average defender. Like, he's not elite. Not at this point has he risen to a Gold Glove standard defender. But, like, it's his bat.
Yeah.
And I think that's why I shifted him down so much, is because there is a world in which his bat doesn't change that we still have success. Now, if his bat is successful, that catapults us once again. It puts us higher up on that ceiling mark. But that's, for me, it doesn't have to happen for this team to maybe go way above what expectations are.
Yeah, I think I agree with you, actually. The only thing is, one of those two guys has to turn it around.
Right.
It could be Walker or it could be Gorman, but they both can't not turn it around.
Yeah.
The team right now is built and dependent upon them, one of them being that.
And here's the thing, and again, this is going to be unpopular.
Let me interrupt. Gorman is the only one that's proven to be able to carry the offense so far. Walker, sure, hit super well in 23, but Gorman carried that offense for a solid month and a half of the season by himself.
Right. And I'll give you that. And so here, and we've talked about this, so this won't be a surprise to you, but if they falter, both of them, being Walker and Gorman, you have to trade one of them. And I think Walker is the one that's easier to trade because he's a right-handed bat. I'm not saying he will be, but he can be a defensive liability in right field. So you have internal options to replace him. Gorman's the left-handed power bat that everybody covets.
Oh, from a bat point of view?
Right.
Yeah.
And so, my heart. I love Walker. That's my boy.
Yeah.
Was there for his first home run behind home plate. Like, I was cheering just like as loud as probably he was when it left the bat for him. And so I hope that, that isn't the case. But I've come to reality that if he falters here, maybe it is time to say, hey, because there's still potential with him. He's young.
Yeah.
So, I don't necessarily like the thought of moving on from him, but I think you have to give it serious consideration.
I would counter with it's the other way around, simply because Gorman hits ARB next year, and it will keep them from paying him a little bit. Whereas Walker has one more year of control, pre-ARB control, and he's younger. Gorman will be 25, I think, this year, whereas Walker's just turned 22.
Yeah.
So while I agree with the bat, there's no other. J.J. Weatherholt's the only other left-handed bat that is there, because Davis is at least 2 years away.
Right.
But it's not that power.
Right. Nobody from the left side for us has that power potential. Like they don't. Like 100%. Burleson,
and finding
Newt Bar, Weatherholt, all of those guys aren't going to produce what Gorman can at his peak.
Yeah.
So okay, so 8. Who do you got at 8?
Victor Scott II.
Okay, so he didn't even make my list.
Yeah,
I know.
Nobody
you're
else
going to be disappointed in that. I like him.
I'm just saying, I have had pretty good success the last couple of years with hunches. For me, this team's offensively struggled the last 2+ years from the center field position. And last year we had Siani, and he hit 500 for like a month and a half by getting the best luck possible. But he was a Gold Glove defender. I mean, he was a stellar defender, and he stole really well. I think we need to find a way to get productivity from that position. And in the system that's close, Victor Scott is the only one that has the potential. Is he going to be a 300 hitter? No.
Right.
Is he going to be 105 OPS plus, 110 OPS plus? Could be, and we would take that. Gold Glove defense with
100%
above average, slightly above average bat. If he could have a season, an offensive profile like Donovan of some sort, and learn to just get on base and then steal like he can, like his ceiling says he can, I think the team needs something like that in that position. Because if Nootbaar can't play center, and it's not that he can't, it's more so that he doesn't have the greatest reads in center, and then can he stay healthy in center? Probably not. And the team doesn't even seem like they like that idea anyway, because they want to put Siani there right now. So if Nootbaar's not the option, there's no other option in the minors until Davis gets here, which again is 2+ years.
And I don't know that he's a true center fielder either.
Yeah, it could not be. So we don't have an option. So we're either gonna have to pay for it or stick a defender only in there. So I think Scott's our only option to get an above average bat at that position.
Yeah, I hope he wins the spot. Like, I'm with you in there. I hope he wins the opening day center field spot. I like Siani, a quality dude, but I like him off the bench. I think he can play all three outfield positions really, really well off the bench for you. His speed, his defense is really what he's going to have to hang his hat on for his career. So my 8 is Donovan. You mentioned him. I think he really needs to kind of, just be who he is. I'm not thinking that he has to have some, major year, but I do think that if he plays his position well, whatever position that's going to be,
right. That's the key to this.
Right. He's going to be successful. I think I talked last episode, he's better offensively when he's at second base. He's better defensively when he's at second base overall. He's a good defensive left fielder or outfielder. I mean, again, Gold Glove for utility. That's not a small feat. I mean, dude's versatile. Love that about him, but I'd like to see him find a spot to settle into and see if that does elevate his game a little bit. If he can play second base every day, or if he's going to play left field every day, if that's the case, let it be every day and let's see what he's going to be. Because again, his ability to get on base, his ability to turn, I was looking at a stat, I think he's only one of 4 players that didn't hit an opposite field home run last year. All of his home runs are pulls. So it's
but he doesn't have a slug profile.
Right. That's why I say it doesn't matter. I just found that interesting
that's true. And
when
then
he
Weatherholt's
gets it,
first home run was an opposite field home run.
Right, exactly. So it's interesting in that regard. So that's why I have him at 8. I mean, I don't think he has to have like this tremendous uptick in performance for this team to go far.
That's the thing. Like his ceiling, he's hitting his ceiling. Now, I think his rookie year was a ceiling, and we would love to see that every year.
Right.
But he's higher than you. He's higher on my list than your list, but he is there. But for me, it's because he's reaching it already, and we just keep doing it.
Right. I'm with you there. So 9, who you got at 9?
McGreevy is my number 9, just because it's been Palante's higher because I think he's probably got more stuff. But honestly, they could be the same pitcher in a sense. Of a same pitcher of place in the rotation type of pitcher, but we need another starter in the system so we can just stop from spending money on starters and just have rookies do it. They're obviously much cheaper, but we can work with them better. And I think he needs to come up, and I think he needs to have a good season. Is he as important as these other players? No, but I think we need him to come up, and I think we need him to have a full season.
Yeah, as much as I love him, and I'm throwing out all kinds of invites, so if he gets wind of this, come on in and talk with us. I'd love to talk with you, McGreevy. But I have Sonny Gray at 9
Ooh.
because I think if Sonny falls off the face of the earth, we're in a lot of trouble because we
that's
don't
a good
have
point.
anybody behind him that can be a legitimate number one. Somebody would really have to step up to facilitate that role.
Yeah.
And your number one has to be that guy. If you're on a losing streak, you're expected to see him stop it when he comes out, when he pitches. And so that's why I have Sonny Gray here.
Stopper comes from
McGreevy doesn't make my top 10, not because I don't see value in what he's doing.
Yeah.
Because I really hope he does crack that lineup.
Yeah.
But I think, like you, I just don't see that. If he comes in and pitches well, awesome. It's going to help us.
Yeah.
If he's not a part of the rotation, I think we're kind of there.
Yeah.
But if Sonny Gray comes in and doesn't have the year, man, we are in a lot of trouble. And if he comes in and has a Cy Young, it could save us. I mean, that could add 7-8 wins that we wouldn't necessarily get.
Yeah. The only reason he didn't make the list is because I was approaching it because I agree with everything that you said for this year and this season. But I don't know that I would see this season as a success or failure based on the win total as much as, these kids taking a step forward. Because if Walker hits 300 and gets 28 home runs, the season is a success even if we have 72 wins.
Yeah, I completely agree.
Sonny, and honestly too, based off his offseason comments, if we're not winning, he might be gone too.
True.
But I agree with what you said, but I don't think the season's dependent upon him being insane just because contending versus not contending is slightly moot. Would I love to be in Busch Stadium and it's October? Yeah, obviously.
Right.
But that's why.
Yeah, no, you're good. All right, so who's 10? Who hits the bottom of the list?
Donovan is there for me. Basically, with everything that you said, just priority is less because he's already hitting it, and I just need him to keep doing it. I just need him to not fall off. Kind of what you talked about with Sonny Gray. If he fell off, would our season tank the same as it would if Sonny did? No, but he's a little bit of a franchise player and leader of the team, in my opinion, and he just needs to keep his 115 OPS plus.
Yeah, it's good. I have old Willie Contreras here at number 10 just because of the move. I mean, whether we want to admit it or not, like, he will have an impact on our infielders. And because the majority of our pitchers do play to contact, it's going to be important. I think even for the development or the continued development of someone like Mason Wynn, you need a first baseman over there that's able to at least catch the ball. Yeah. And I don't have doubts in him, but if he gets out there at first base and it looks rough, man, that it's going to be a challenge because you're already talking about, depending on what the lineup looks like, can Burley get enough at bats at DH because Gorman's potentially going to be the DH. You then have to start putting Willie at the DH because you don't have a spot in the field for him. It really does muddy up that offensive lineup, and we go back to this big guessing game of who's going to be in the lineup every day, and I think that can potentially create some problems, not even on the field, but off the field. I think you start to get some aggravation, not only with the fans, but within the clubhouse to a degree because players aren't getting their opportunity that maybe was promised to them in spring, those type of things. So that's why I have him at 10, because if he goes out there and just kind of plays slightly above average at first base and just kind of squashes all the comments about can he play first,
right?
It's a moot point. Like, his bat's going to play. I do like the fact that he added some muscle in the offseason, so maybe his power numbers uptick a little bit. So I think it could be a potential win-win for the organization having him there. I said it earlier. Not going to bet against the man. His passion, I love. Like, I'd take his passion on this team well into his 40s if he wants to hang around that long. Yeah,
I don't think it's if he's not good at first and he can't pick to save his life, which I'm not saying this is the case because I think he'll be fine. But say you can't do that, I don't think it's that big of a problem because you just put him at DH and Burleson goes at first, and you're probably going to get the same defense. And there's not a first baseman in our system that's going to take that away from him. So we don't really have an option.
Yeah, because Luken Baker's not.
He's a horrible
much
defender.
Higher defensive projection than either of those two
and he's
guys.
not a mainstay lineup guy either.
But so here's sake of argument, just quickly. Donovan has a first base glove. He's played first base for us.
Yeah.
He's not bad.
That's a fair point.
Right. Then you move him over to first base. And again, Willie's going to have to DH. Do you put Burley out in left?
Yeah.
Or do you leave him on the bench and Nootbaar's in left and you got VS2 in center and Walker in right? So that's what I mean by that. Like, if there is, a downtick, especially from both of them at the first base side, Willie and Burley, you got to do something. Donovan's your only other option that's played first. Yeah,
I agree. Yeah, that'll be interesting. We can't make that call because he's going to play for April no matter what.
Oh, 100%.
At least.
Right.
That'll be interesting. That's a really good. Sorry, go ahead.
So we're talking about the Cardinals in 25, and it seems like there's a lot up in the air.
Right. Yeah, oh yeah.
So I just think they're going to have to work hard to have a 500 season.
Yeah,
that's the way I see it. But you don't know because everything's moving.
Yeah,
yeah. I'd say some of the best teams we've had in history for the Cardinals don't always look that great on paper, but all of a sudden they figure out something and they get hot.
That's the only way that St. Louis sports really works.
This isn't baseball, but don't forget what the Blues did some years ago.
Right,
they were terrible and they won the Stanley Cup, so you never know.
That's it.
I know. Well, if you think about 04 versus 06 for the Cardinals, they had the best team in baseball in 04 and they got bounced. Now, Boston had the most legendary run ever, and Destiny probably said that, it's time to get the ring. But then in 06, it was like, oh man, this team's kind of terrible and I don't know if they're going to make it. And then they won the World Series. Barely. Just scratching to it. So, that's an interesting point. So we got to wrap this up soon, but something I do want to talk about, I think has been interesting. This spring, they're testing the automatic ball strike system, and they're just doing the challenging portion.
Right.
So what happens is, to lay it out, there's TrackMan data, and I don't know how it works. It gets into the system and into the Jumbotron, but every at-bat, the batter, catcher, and pitcher have the opportunity to challenge a call that the umpire makes. So say a ball hits the corner of the strike zone, and it's called a ball. The umpire didn't see it well. The catcher framed it really well, or framed it horribly. And the catcher can tap his head, and that signals the umpire that the catcher wants to challenge it. And it will hit the system, and it will show on the Jumbotron of where exactly the.
I'm wondering how many times they're going to touch their helmet, and they're not protesting the call.
Well,
so because you see them, they get in there, they move that helmet around.
Yeah. Oh, I see what you're saying. So a couple other rules to it. Obviously the batter, catcher, and pitcher can only do it. The dugout can't do it, so the manager can't do it.
Right.
Each team only gets 2 challenges per game. When they use the challenge, if they win the challenge, they keep it.
Right.
And if they lose the challenge, they lose that particular one. So the thing I'm interested about is the usage of it. In spring, it's only going to be in spring, so it doesn't make its way to the season. But using it this year in spring almost guarantees it's going to be in the game next year. I would say. So, what's the impact that it's going to have on the game? Question 1 and question 2: where, from a competitive point of view, is it going to be saved for? If that makes sense. Like, is it going to be a 9th inning, last pitch, or are we going to use it in inning 1 when bases loaded, or like nobody's on base, competitive type nature.
Yeah. I think it's a competitive balance to start at the end there. I think it's just, that's where like gamesmanship will come in. I think, really if it's bases loaded, you've got, 1 out, 2 outs. I don't care what inning it is. You have an opportunity to really kind of start the scoring. You use it. You use it in a situation like that because you don't know what the 9th inning is going to hold.
It's a full count and it's called a strike, but it's actually a
ball
in the
4,
batter.
right? Yeah. Or just a ball in general, so they still get another opportunity versus being punched out on strikes. Like, because you don't want to squander an opportunity. I mean, we see how well the Cardinals do with bases loaded anyway,
right?
So like,
heartbreaking,
right? You think about stuff like that. For me, like, I'm all for it as long as it doesn't slow the pace of the game down. Like, I'm interested in the notion of like giving every at bat one but here's the deal.
Oh.
The batter only gets one, and the pitcher and catcher are a duo that only get one. So you
even if they win it?
Even if they win it, you only get one opportunity. So like make it count like in that. And I think you'll see it a lot on third strike calls, those type of things in that scenario, or ball fours, whatever. Like I'm
it's not going to be pitch
with
one,
that.
for
right,
sure. Yeah.
Right. I know it's hard to track that way. I'm not disappointed with only giving teams 2, and then if they win, they get to keep it. That's fine with me. I think it'll be interesting to see if they keep it that way, how teams manage it, like you're saying.
Yeah.
Because will certain players get to have their own?
And then, like on the flip side, are there going to be players that the manager's like, no,
right, don't do it.
You're terrible at this anyway.
Right.
So you mentioned about how it'll affect the game. Well, they average it out, and there's about 3.1 challenges a game. And each challenge lasts 17 seconds.
Yeah.
Right.
So I don't know if it'll slowly. It doesn't look like the stats say it's going to slow the game.
No. I don't think so. You're talking from an entertainment value too, because if you're at a game and the challenge that the dugout can make for a base call takes
way longer.
A minute and a half,
right?
And people are okay with that. There's drama in that. That's entertaining.
Right.
But with this, I don't think it's entertainment value. I think it's just like some players are going to benefit from it, and some players might not.
Right. And again, it creates, like I said, it creates gamesmanship. It creates a little bit of this, baseball IQ for teams, because they're going to have to be intentional about how they use them.
Yeah.
But will you see some more dugout fights because somebody called for one and then they lose it, and then they get to the dugout and the other guy's like, dude, you just robbed us of our challenge. Maybe, I'm not saying that'll be the case, but it'd be funny.
I think one thing that's interesting that is a little underrated or may not be known is how the strike zone will change from it. Because they talked about, I read an article and watched an interview that at the start of this spring, MLB measured every single roster invite person, head to toe, standing up straight, and that's what they based the strike zone off of. Whereas previously, it was based off their batting stance.
Right.
So some guys could get a leg up by having more of a bent knee or crotch knee, which made the strike zone lower.
Right.
So that will change the zone up for probably most players, but it could be minuscule for a lot, but it could be a big deal for a lot.
Hey, what's interesting is I don't think they're going to use this in extra innings. Like in extra innings, this challenge is not applicable.
Right. It's only for 9 innings.
Do you think that seems kind of strange? I mean, when they play basketball at the end of the game, they got to review things.
Yeah.
So here the game is tied 5-5, and it seems like the most critical part of the game, and they're not going to do it in extra innings. I don't know what you think about that, but
I don't know.
Man, yeah, I'd be kind of torn, because then do you have an independent guy like they do with all sports, like in the NFL or in hockey, that is reviewing it in overtime, making that call, type of deal to say, hey, no, this wasn't a strike, so we need to adjust it.
I kind of get the hunch that baseball wants to move away from extra innings as much as possible, like finish the game in 9, because nobody wants to sit for a 4-hour baseball game anymore.
Yeah, but it's
going to happen.
Right, you're never going to get away from that, because I think there's excitement when it comes to that to some degree too.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. For avid baseball fans, I don't know. I don't see why they wouldn't, but everybody hates the ghost runner thing.
Well, I mean, you sent me the banana ball rules, like adopt that in extra innings, right? Have the guy just hit it. There's one fielder, and he's got to run and get the ball and get it to home before, and the guy can't stop running. If he scores, they win. If he doesn't, the other team gets an opportunity to do the same thing. Right. You can make some exciting baseball that way, but hilarious. I don't think MLB is going to go that route.
I think. Sorry, go ahead.
They say that the 51% of the challenges were overturned. So it's kind of a push. 50. Yeah. So I don't know what kind of impact that'll have on the game, but only 50%.
I mean, I think it's good. The umps get a bad rap. Most of them are really good. If you look at their percentage of failure, it's generally like 92, 93% success, which means they're only missing 7%, which if those 7% pitches are like critical, that's a big deal, right?
Right.
But I think it's good for baseball, especially if it's really quick.
Right.
Like, I don't think the robot ump thing is good. And from what I understand, even Rob Manfred came out and said that he's not interested in doing that at all.
Yeah, I don't think that would be a win for baseball.
But I think for like players like Lars Nootbaar we talked about, he had last year a called strike rate of 10.5% of pitches out of the zone. So 10% of the pitches that he saw were called strikes out of the zone.
Yeah.
And he's an OBP guy. He relies completely upon getting on base. So he gets all of that information back because he could challenge fringe calls, right? Which then might make him swing the bat more. And is that good or bad?
Right.
We'll have to see.
Right.
I think it's good for baseball because it puts more power to the players, the pitchers, and
100%.
the hitters. Keeps everything a little more honest, especially when it matters. You're not going to call this when it's pitch number 2 and it's like a fringe call and the count is not super adjusted for it. Nobody's going to call that.
Right.
That's
My biggest thing to the players, too, I know it'll be entertaining, but don't try and show up the umpire with it.
Oh, yeah.
Like, don't be like coming back to the plate. See, I told you, man.
Yeah.
I told you. You should listen to me.
I think it's going to be interesting if the time of it that it takes is 17 seconds. You know, that's what's up in the air. Is it going to be quick? You know, is somebody going to touch your helmet and they think they're challenging it?
The two calls of the game I watched yesterday were 15 seconds apiece.
Were they?
Right. Yeah,
Okay.
so it'd probably get quicker.
They have a way, and again, you could eliminate, like, they touch their helmet, but they're also having to speak to the umpire, like, hey, I want to challenge this. Like, so you eliminate some of that, because I know some of them like to adjust their helmets, things like that.
Yeah.
But you just say, tapping it, going, hey, I am challenging this, or the catcher doing the same thing.
Yeah.
I think it'll be enough to where there won't be a lot of confusion in that side of it. But again, to your point, as long as they can keep it quick and moving, I don't see an issue with it. Again, maybe my ambition of giving one to every, maybe you do it this way. You get one per inning.
Yeah.
You know,
I think they're going to stick with the 2 per team.
I think that's how they'll start. Absolutely. Yeah. And if it becomes successful and it doesn't take a long time, maybe they'll adjust it, add more, maybe it'll become 3. Yeah. You know, that type of thing. They'll never go to 1 per at bat because I think then it just becomes too much. I would like to see it, but there's just way too many challenges that happen. So I like the idea of where it's at right now. And if they were to say, hey, we're going to roll this out, I could get behind it. Like, it doesn't bother me.
If I'm honest, I would love to see it this season. I know it's too early and the stadiums aren't built for it and support it yet, but I think it's too easy of a thing, seemingly. I mean, they started it this spring and it's already pretty smooth, minus the microphones. The umps microphone stuff's terrible, but
that'll be better in ballparks.
Yeah, it's a smooth process of getting it on the screen and looking at it and making the call and then moving on. I think it's ready to go personally. But yeah, it's probably coming in 26.
Yeah, and maybe they'll surprise us. MLB has done that before, where everybody's on board and they just say, "Hey, let's roll with it." Because it's got to be some sort of computer system. So it's not like it's going to be an on-field adjustment for teams. Yeah. It's all based up in the booth and in the box, those type of things. So.
Yeah.
And I think they're using something called Hawkeye technology.
Yeah, I think
and that's what's going to put it on the scoreboard.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I'm wondering how the fans are going to interact with that. You know.
Yeah.
Because
a lot of cheering, a lot of booing.
Yes, a lot of. That's right.
I think it'll be good.
Yeah, and I think it engages the fan base a little bit more, gives them something to look to.
Yeah, because in the end, the games, it's about entertainment, right?
Right.
We're all there to be entertained.
Yeah, so you could have fun with it.
Yeah. Well, thank you guys for listening. We appreciate you sticking around, and if you did stick around, in the comments section, leave some comments for disagreements, arguments, and conversation, and particularly YouTube. That would be awesome. But from us at Who's On First, thanks for listening. We'll see you guys next week.